In this episode of the podcast, we're talking to Alison of Alison Conklin Photography. Now, as her name suggests, Alison is a photographer. She's a wedding and portrait professional who is also an ambassador for Fuji, and honestly, her work speaks for itself. What we're going to dive into are the experiences in Alison's personal life that have given her the perspective that she has when she's behind the camera. That is what I find truly unique, because honestly, the work that she creates and the experiences that she's had teaches us the highest form of what photography can potentially be, and documenting these finite yet incredible moments in our own lives. I hope that you gain as much from this episode as I did in the conversation that I had with Alison. Let's go ahead and dive in. This is the TSS Podcast. It's a place for authentic conversations to uncover the stupid, simple truths that help us succeed in business, create better relationships, and lead more fulfilling lives. Welcome to Think Stupid Simple. Alison, welcome to the podcast. We have a little ritual here, Alison. We light a candle. Do you have any rituals that you obsess over?
Coffee. That can be a ritual, right?
It can be a ritual. Is that your morning ritual?
That is. Yeah, I'm not really a breakfast person, so it's definitely coffee before anything else. And yeah.
Well, tell me about this. Tell me about this morning routine here. So other than coffee, which by the way, I'm not really a huge fan of drinking coffee. I do like making it though.
That's funny. Yeah, so I mean, like I have two high school kids, I have two boys, and so it's about just like getting up, making sure everyone's logging in for online school, making coffee, and they like one of them sits out here and does all the classes. So I've been taking a marketing class this semester and a world studies class. So
that's rad.
Yeah, I mean, I learned about the Magna Carta yesterday, random things.
That's kind of fun. You look incredibly young to have two high school kids. So
thanks. I'm 40.
You're 40?
I'm 40.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
Making 40 look good. I'm 40 as well, by the way.
I
don't think I'm doing it as much justice as you are.
Oh, you're very kind. I don't agree, but so this is my 23rd year of being a professional photographer.
Dang.
Which is, I know, it's wild. But yeah, so my oldest is 18. He's a senior, and he just decided to go to West Virginia University.
Yeah.
So that's like a thing. And my youngest, he's a junior, so we'll be doing this again next year. But I'm not ready to let them go. But it's certainly intriguing. I saw from your Instagram that you have younger children. Is that correct?
I do. So I have 4 kids. The oldest is 10 years old. Youngest is 6 months old. So, and then we have 2 7-year-olds. But was not expecting, so I thought by high school, the kids would be, you still have to wake them up?
Not the one, but the younger one, yes. They're
really?
They're 13 months apart. So,
okay.
And they couldn't be more different. So the one is like super independent and could do everything on his own, doesn't need me at all. And the younger one, who I probably babied, so it's probably my own personal doing on this. I still have to make sure that he gets up when the alarm goes off. So yeah, it's all my fault, actually.
That's definitely a thing for, I don't know, I feel like our kids, they have such wildly different personalities despite their genetics. And so a huge part of me does believe in nurture and the influence that we have and the environment that they're in. But then another side is okay, nature is an actual thing, because there's so many things that you did not plant in their heads, but they're just that way. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, but it's, I guess I wouldn't want 2 of the same exact children, so it's fun. I'm obsessed with them. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm an empty nester, so potentially I could be an empty nester at 42. What is that about?
That is very young. That you have plenty of time to do things.
I know. I'm like, what do I do with my life here? So we'll see. It's an adventure, I guess.
That's pretty awesome. I love the room and the wallpaper that you have behind you. There's
Thank
some,
you. That was a COVID project.
was it?
Yeah. I
I
got really
dig it.
tired of having a really boring Zoom background, so I got some wallpaper and put it up.
Yeah, it got good natural light in there too. I'm sure you take pictures in there as well.
I do. Yeah.
Nice. Well, tell me a little bit about, you said you got into photography 23 years ago. So you
hmm
were 17 at the time, if my math serves me.
So I shot my very first wedding in 1998. Uh,
Wow.
so
That
that
was when
was
I
my first
graduated from
paid.
high school. That's, you were graduating from high
Same.
school too, right? Okay.
Yes. So that was my first paying gig as a photographer. I mean, I guess I had been doing senior pictures for like all of my friends in high school.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was any like payment on that. So my first like real gig was a wedding, and I'd never even been a guest at a wedding before. So that was pretty stressful, I guess
That's
is the proper
wild.
word. Yeah. But I had been doing photography since I was like 14. I had a dark room in my basement at home.
Okay. So you were somewhat familiar with it, but I still feel like doing photography and then shooting a wedding are pretty substantially different things. So how was that first experience?
I was so nervous. And this is film, right? This is 1998, so
Yeah.
like digital cameras aren't a thing. I photographed like everything and anything that like moved because I really didn't know what exactly was important. It wasn't like I could say, "Hey, can I second shoot?" Like I never
Yeah.
second shot for anybody. I mean, I was 18 years old. I did previous to the wedding, I took my two friends, and one put on her mom's vintage wedding dress, and the other one put on his prom tux. And I ran around the college where the wedding was going to be. It was going to be at Lafayette College in Easton. And
Yeah.
so I like did all these like trying just to figure out how do I pose, how do I deal with these whatever. And I did that. I was really nervous, but it all, I think when it came down to when I looked at all the film at the end, I was really attracted to all the real actual moments, and all of the things that drawn like that made me pick up a camera in the first place. So that was really kind of like eye opening for me because I really had no idea what I was doing, honestly.
Yeah.
But then looking at the film, seeing what I was attracted to, was just all of that candid and like beautiful moments that are so important. And so,
That's
yeah,
so interesting. So I got to ask this on the nerdy side. How many rolls of film did you take with you? Were you prepared for this thing?
I had like 25 rolls of film and I think I shot 18 or something like that. And it was black and white and color, and I would mix it in between. I had no rhyme or reason. I was just like, I had one camera body because I had only owned, I was using my dad's like old AE1 Canon
Oh,
camera.
wow.
I know. So yeah, I mean, was I prepared? I don't know. But are they still married and really happy and love their photos? Yes. Would I want to actually look at any of those photos now without cringing? Probably not. But
Are you kidding?
I
Like that
did.
would be, I kind of want to see those photographs. If they were to be able to see and to have actual physical images of where you started and now where you are in your career, you got to do that as a blog post. That has to be like, if that was
Yeah,
available right now, we would show it.
right. But I gave them all the negatives, right? So
Oh, so
like
you don't have them.
basically, yeah. I mean, because I was 18, I had no idea what I was doing, and I probably paid them to shoot their wedding when it came down to the cost of like, and
Yeah.
I think because I was always developing black and white film, but I was too nervous to develop their wedding film, so I took it
Hmm.
to like a local camera shop and had them do it. But yeah, it would be kind of fun to see. I'm friends with both of them on Facebook, so I suppose I could be like, hey,
You should
can I
totally
make
reach out.
contact sheets? I should. You're right. I should make contact sheets. Um, but yeah, so that's like how the professional part started. But my dad built me a darkroom when I was 14 because I became obsessed with photography uh, after my mom died. So it was just this like whole thing.
This outlet for you to tell me about what that was like having a parent die when you're so young and finding photography. What was that for you?
Sure. So, my mom died when I was 14, uh, just suddenly in the kitchen. So it was just her and I talking one day. She was making me breakfast. It was my first day at my first real job at the local library. And it was like an hour or two before I had to leave. And suddenly she said she didn't feel well and
Oh
she
man.
collapsed. So I tried my best work at a CPR that I had learned in a babysitting class I had taken that summer. I called 911. I called my father. She ended up dying that day. So luckily, my parents were hobbyist photographers. Both of them were chemists.
Hmm.
My dad has a doctorate in chemistry. My mom went to college for chemistry and had always throughout their lives turned any bathroom into a darkroom and just like always shot black and white, always shot Kodachrome, like sort of just
Yeah.
loved photography just because it was sort of this, it was an art plus it was chemistry in a way. So when my dad, after she died, my dad was like, could you put together all the pictures for the memorial service? And he handed me this like beat up cardboard box. I had never seen it before. It was like living in my parents' closet. And he handed it to me and said, "Can you just like put together something for the funeral?" And I was literally, I found this like I'm a 100% Sicilian. So my only family came in. They're loud, really obnoxious. I found this quiet
Yeah.
little corner um, and just sort of sat there with this box. And I had contact sheets to go through, and I had prints that they had made. Some of them had started to yellow because they sat in the fixer too long or whatever. But I fell in love with all the pictures because they weren't Sears portrait, they weren't Olin Mills. They were photos of my mom laughing, not looking at the camera. And I suddenly started to realize like the power of photography, right? Because it was
Yeah.
I could see I was only 14, and as a 14-year-old, you think you know everything, but I never knew my mom as an adult, like not as a parent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this sort of gave me an insight into who my parents were together as a couple, and I became obsessed with photography. So I'm an only child, and the joke is always that my dad didn't know what to do with me. So I wouldn't leave him alone. And so he built me a darkroom and was like, stay in the basement.
Oh.
um, but he taught me how to develop film and how to enlarge prints. So my dad is like a very quiet, non-emotional kind of showing person.
Yeah.
So we never really talked about the loss of my mother, but it would be him and I developing negatives of pictures of my mother in the dark room in the basement. Um, and there's something about watching a print come up. I don't know if you've ever been in a dark room,
I
but watching a
have.
print come up. Okay, so like that magical moment where like you're shaking the trays or whatever and you're watching the print.
Hmm.
So we kind of worked through our grief with photography in like a way that was maybe different than how most people would work through the grief of someone.
That's incredible, and it
And
has to be almost. I can't imagine the feeling of seeing those images of your mom appear on that film, on that negative as you're printing it. That has to be a very surreal kind of feeling, almost watching her come back in a way, in that memory. But
right,
did they ever figure out why she had passed, or what was the cause of that?
sure. So, little backstory: my mom had a genetic heart disease, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So, if you are a sports fan, sometimes you will hear about someone dropping dead in the middle of a basketball court.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it's usually because of that. So she had that, but I had been diagnosed with the exact same genetic disease in February of 1994, and I watched my
Oh
mother die
wow.
of that exact same disease in July of 1994. So there was that aspect as well that I watched my mom die of the same thing I had just been diagnosed with as a 14-year-old, and then having my dad have this daughter that has the same thing that caused his wife to die suddenly. So it's good times.
I have to
But
imagine that after 14, you kind of skipped the rest of your young adult life and went straight to being an adult.
yes, you could absolutely say that's true. So I think for me, the idea of photography was like suddenly all of those experiences between being diagnosed with the heart disease and also losing my mother um, made me realize how fleeting moments are. Like one minute, everything could be totally fine. And the next minute, everything changes, right? Like that
Hmm.
day, I was just a 14-year-old getting ready to work at the library. And then by the end of it, I had to call my friends and be like, my mom died,
Hmm.
right? Like that's just, and I know I've never lost that. There's been other like crazy stories, which we can skip or we can get into, that continually to teach me how important and how fragile life is.
We have time.
So,
I don't want to skip anything.
okay. um, I think the other aspect of like going through all of the work that my parents had taken, I was only an only child, so I had tons of photos of my childhood.
Hmm.
And so it really taught me, even if my mother wasn't in a photo physically, she was taking a photo. And you and I could be in a room and take a picture of the same subject, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same because your life experiences are different than my life experiences. And so we would approach it, and there's no wrong way, you know what I mean? But we would approach it differently.
For
So
sure.
that idea is like, I got to see how my mom saw me. If you're like following, if you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
because she would take pictures of me sleeping on the couch. She would take pictures of me like covered in spaghetti. You know what I mean? Like she would just take pictures. And I sort of got to have this idea or this identity of how she saw me that I sort of carried with me along with the power of like photography and the, fragileness of life. Um, yeah.
That definitely, I feel like it's difficult to place into an artist's mind, a photographer's mind, the importance of what they're doing until, like, because you can say all the words, like we have all the training, all the education to try to teach people what these things actually mean, and yet they really still don't understand until they've actually gone through something for themselves, until they've actually experienced it firsthand. That being said, to have experienced that at 14 years old, it's I'm as much a student of human psychology as I am of photography, and that has to very much make an impression to the point where at a young age you knew exactly what a photograph was. You probably knew from that point forward you'd have a camera in your hand all your life. Was
Yeah.
that ingrained at that point?
Yeah. I took a camera everywhere. I was kind of shy and awkward. I'm still kind of shy and awkward, but especially as a high schooler. So, like, she died in July of '94. I was just starting to be a freshman in high school. So, I joined yearbook. I had a camera with me in my hand. I would take my friends and like make them do artsy things and take photos of them. I would always bring it to family functions. I photographed everything. Because I loved picking up a camera and because I knew what a gift all of it was, right? Like what a gift it was to simply be in high school that day, or what a gift it was to be in the presence of someone you love, right? Like it's all just like how lucky we are, right?
Yeah.
So I did all of that, and I photographed all of the yearbooks for 4 years. It was great. And so then I shot somebody's wedding because basically they were probably looking for a cheaper option.
Yeah.
But I never imagined that I could make a career out of photography. Like that felt impossible.
Yeah.
Um,
Anthony, while
but
Allison's sharing this, can you pull up her work and just kind of let's flip through some of those images? Because now, as you explain your background, your personal experiences, I see your images much more clearly. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's a certain I can tell that you're looking for moments that nobody else is.
thanks. Yeah. Um, because I don't know. There's just something about that is really, I mean, obviously life experience. There's also this one time I went blind because I had a brain tumor.
Are you kidding me?
You're like, oh, I'm not kidding you. So I will quickly kind of fast forward to that. But I got married very young. Obviously, I was 20.
Uh-huh.
I had two kids kind of right away. Got divorced when I was pregnant with my second son. So,
Oh, wow.
and suddenly found myself to be a single mom. And was like, how am I going to support myself? At that time, I had been working at Rodale Press, which was a publishing company that did Prevention Magazine, Men's Health. It no longer exists to this day, but was a big publishing press in Pennsylvania. But what was happening was I was going through the office, like cubicle by cubicle, basically shooting everyone's family photos, shooting people's like smaller weddings. So when I found myself a single parent, and I knew that for me, I wanted to be around my kids as much as possible, just because my mom missed my graduation. My mom missed so much of my life, and I didn't want to miss theirs. I was like, okay, well, I'll take an ad out on the Knot. The Knot is like new at this point because I'm old, and this is like 2000 and something. And I'll see how this goes and see if I can do photography on the weekends, and they would be with my kids would be with their dad, and then I could, be with them during the week. This felt like a great plan. So
This is when you're like 20. I'm just trying to get a timeline wise. 24, 25.
Yeah, I had Moses when I was 2004. So it was like was 23,
Okay.
turning 24. So yeah, I think at 23, I was like, I'll just take an ad out on the Knot and see if I can be a wedding photographer. I've shot a couple weddings at this point. I've shot a lot of families, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and at this point, it's not overcrowded. Again, because I'm old. and and I did. I was successful. Like, people hired me, and I started to make a name for myself. And I was able to work on weekends and then take care of my kids Monday through Friday and edit at night once they went to bed. Did the whole thing. Got a little apartment in Bethlehem, and living the dream. I don't know what to say, but like doing all the things that I needed to doing to support my two young children and be a single mom. Eventually I do get remarried to my husband, Jeff, who was shooting for the newspaper at the time. So I pulled him over to the dark side, and then we do weddings together.
I love how for when you're describing all this, like, you're so funny and cute in the way that you kind of gloss over these important things. I'm not going to let you though. But so going back to you're 24, you're a single mom of two. That's incredibly difficult, and you're basically building a wedding photography business from the ground up at that point. How many years? Because that's a grind. I mean, I post about this quite a bit actually, and maybe people get tired of hearing it, but I feel like in terms of like language, this is come on my mind over the past 5 years, like repeatedly, that in the English language, in every language, in every culture, in every religion, it's almost like it's as if everything is designed to make women out to be the weaker sex, like from the curse words that we use to calling somebody a pussy or referencing any body part, all this kind of stupid stuff. And in reality, the strength of the sexes is actually like opposite. Like when I watch what my partner does and I try to emulate, I try to actually do it. I try to wake up at night and I try to do the things that she does, and it's impossible. And then she'll get up and she'll go like to work, like do a full 8 hours. So I can't imagine, which by the way, my partner Yen was a single mother for 5 years, and she's in IT and web development basically. So she works like 70, 80 hours a week just to prove herself in an industry that's male dominated, while she was raising her first son on her own. So when you think about those things, it makes me like go back to, we got this all backwards. Like, it's so weird. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a system of control. I don't know what reason, but it's all backwards. And I'm not going to let you gloss over it. So tell me what it was like in that time period. You have two kids. You're with them Monday through Friday. you're also building a wedding business. Can you go into the day to day of what that's like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was really hard. But it was like one of those things where you either are going to walk through this and you're going to walk through all the mud and like stress of it, or you're just not going to. And it was really important to me. First of all, I'm in my early 20s. I'm a single mom. I have a heart disease. I've had two very high risk pregnancies, and gratefully, both of my boys were healthy. But I've always had this idea of just like not being there for their childhood. So it was really important. So like that driving force of like, I'm going to make this work and I'm going to figure it out. But it was, I mean, I would be up all night editing weddings because at this point digital had come along and I had started, I mean, I shot the first maybe couple years in film, but then did digital. And I remember like sitting at my computer, like trying to answer emails with like both kids crawling all over me, and I remember one time, actually, this is the best. I was really close to my camera shop that was because this is again before the internet. I mean, obviously not before the internet, but like, before we all
It wasn't what it is
online.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really aging myself. So I had a really great relationship with the camera shop here in town, Dan's Camera. And they had recommended me for a wedding. And the bride emailed me and said, can we get together to meet? And I responded, yes, let me just check to see if I can have someone watch my children Wednesday night and I'll confirm with you. And so then I emailed her back and she never emailed me. Then I got a call from Dan's and they said, just want to let you know that so-and-so said that they reached out to you, but they thought you were really unprofessional by mentioning you needed childcare. And I remember thinking like, well, you know what then? I don't want them as a client.
Yeah.
Because like if they're not going to understand that I'm a real person who has like real life situations, and if they're not going to understand that I'm going to come to their wedding with eyes that maybe they don't have yet because they haven't lived through some things, then that's okay.
That's crazy.
But I remember, I've never forgotten that. It's been like, it's like, oh, okay. So like maybe I wouldn't answer the email the same way at this point, but that's 20 years down the road, like of wisdom, I suppose. But yeah, like I guess that's the best story to kind of round up what it was like to be a single mom juggling two kids that were 13 months apart by myself and trying to start a business.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I feel like experiences like that they stick with you forever. Like those are very poignant moments. And 20 years ago, or I guess this is 15 years ago, that's still at a place where, like, have you noticed that there's these shifts and movements, and as things move a certain direction, there's usually like a counter shift back towards something else. And 15 years ago, I felt like while the internet is new and there's all this investment and all this, Instagram is probably going to be popping up in the next few years. There's kind of this push towards being more than you can be in the army. No, and like there's this push to like being larger than life, and that's gone on for the past, that was probably from 2005 to 3-4 years ago. And then there starts to be this resistance against it. Like, okay, we're all tired of the fakery. We're all tired of the inauthenticity. And it's almost as if now, if someone were to coach you on how to build a professional website 20 years ago, it would be exactly that. Hide all of your personal life, hide your politics, hide every piece about you. And then today, if that same consultant were to teach you how to build a website, they would likely say, no, put all of your personality onto your website, tell your entire story. People want to know who you are. They want you to be authentic. Would you feel like that would be accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, 100%. I think that so you have to understand that I came into this without anyone coaching me on how to make a website. I took a class at that little camera store on how to build my website. I did. I mean, it looked terrible, but I did it. And it got me through the first couple of years. And I would share pictures of my kids because I was a mom and I was always taking photos of them because I knew that I wanted them to have a history of their lives, even if like, there was a time period between like 13 and 17 where they were like, oh, you're the worst, right? But like
Yeah.
eventually at one point they're going to look through and be like, wow, we've got basically every year, every day documented in some way. So I think I was maybe just, I didn't follow the rules exactly
Yeah.
because I didn't really know what the rules were. It wasn't like I was like, oh, please, dear photographer who's been shooting weddings for a decade, can you tell me exactly what to do? I was making it up. I was honestly, I like had never been to a wedding before. So that first time I shot a wedding, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I was attracted to like real, honest moments, not like look at me and smile. And
I
I just
think
sort
you've
of
been
led
making
with
your own
that.
rules for a very long
Yes.
time,
Yeah.
which is an amazing
100.
thing. I think it takes most of us well into our 30s before we figure out like give up everybody else's rules and live by your own. And some never figure that out. But you were very young when you figured that out.
Yeah. Thanks. Yes, I did. It's always a process, but yeah, I really had nobody to follow me. There was nobody giving me instruction on how to do these things.
You are 25 on
Hmm.
your own. You're building this business up. At what point did you feel like, I have to imagine that like those early years, you felt like you probably couldn't breathe because trying to make money in the industry while trying to support the family and be there with the kids. At what point did this start clicking?
Um, I like what you did there with the clicking.
Oh,
uh,
it wasn't even intentional.
I know. I was such a nerd. Okay, so I feel like it's maybe 5 years in. I I had been shooting a bunch of weddings. I had gone to a wedding and one of the bridesmaids said, I was a bridesmaid in a wedding you shot previously, and when I get married, I'm gonna hire you and take you to Ireland to shoot our wedding. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's never gonna happen,
Like,
but awesome.
that sounds
And
great.
yeah,
Cool. Whatever.
yeah, like okay. But it did. It happened. And I think within that year, I shot a wedding in Ireland and Mexico. And that felt like a huge deal. Now, I'm not saying that destination weddings are glamorous in any way, or that if you don't do what destination weddings, you don't actually make it. But like coming from what I've come out of and like working through all of this and building it basically from nothing, it felt like a really big deal to me. Um, and I mean, since then we've, been able to go to Italy and twice and Hawaii twice and like go to all these places. And I guess that's sort of when I felt like, oh, okay, so I can actually do this because it felt really impossible to be a professional artist. Like that isn't actually a thing.
Yeah.
But I had worked really hard at trying to come up with a way to make it a thing. Um, so yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I guess at that point you'd be close to 30 then? 5 years in the
Yep.
industry.
Hmm.
What
So
were, oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I'm like 29. In 2009 is when
29.
I went to Ireland. So I'm 29 and I'm starting to feel a little bit of security. But I think, and even now, I'm like, are people going to stop calling me? Are they going to stop hiring me to shoot weddings? So there's always that fear. But I started to feel a little bit more secure in it. But then I got a brain tumor. And then
Okay.
I thought my life was
Nope.
over.
Nope. You don't get a gloss over that. Okay. Tell me, you're 29 and you have a brain tumor.
So I don't think I actually realized I had the brain tumor until I was 32.
Oh
I
my
was really
gosh.
tired. So
Yeah.
my kids are young. I am married at this point. My husband's amazing, and we're both like going through the motions of like my kids are in like little league at this point. So if you have any of your children in any kind of organized sports, you know that you're running around like every day. So I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess you could say I was having headaches, but nothing that I would assume like, well, yeah, I'm running my own business and I have two very young kids. Of course I'm tired and I have headaches. I had just shot my first cookbook. I was super excited about the project. It was a bakery in Philadelphia. I was really proud. It was like with a really great publisher. We had gone to this party in Philadelphia for the release of this cookbook. Had a great night. Drove home. Woke up the next morning to get my kids out of bed and do the whole school thing, and I couldn't see anything.
Holy crap.
And like I was rubbing my eyes, and I was like, I like can't. And I looked at my husband like as casually as you would say, "Hey, do you want a cup of coffee?" I said to him, "I can't see anything." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, it feels like I've got layers and layers and layers of saran wrap over my eyes." And so he was like,
Wow.
"Okay." So my husband, the saint that he is, got my kids up and ready for school and then drove me to the emergency room, trying to stay calm because, like, I don't want to freak my children out. This isn't something.
Yeah.
So anyway, went to the emergency room. A CAT scan later showed that I had a golf ball size brain tumor sitting on my optic nerve, and it had to come out.
Holy crap.
And she said, "I did 3 other surgeries this week, same thing as you, and 2 of those people did not get their sight back. So it is really important that we do the surgery right now. And you have to understand, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I mean, spoiler alert, I see you very well, so I got my sight back.
Yeah.
But I went into surgery not knowing if I was going to live, right? Suddenly, like, I woke up on a random Wednesday and I suddenly have a neurologist and I have to have brain surgery. And I can't see. So, like, before, so they're prepping me for all kinds of all the things. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I don't make it out of this and I die, like, what do my kids have? And so, like, it took me back to, I've been photographing their whole lives. And it took me back to the moment of me sitting in the corner with, like, a cardboard box with the pictures my mom took of me. And, like, I knew that at least at some point in their life, I really hoped that they would be able to say, my mom was obsessed with me. She loved me on the days that I was laughing, and she loved me on the days I was crying. And they would have that I would hope that they'd be able to connect the dots on. And that's how I went into surgery. And then by the time everything was over, it was a really long procedure. It was really dark. I, like, woke up and I looked at the clock and I could see the clock. And that was just like, I can see the clock. Like, that was a
Yeah.
huge deal and a huge win. And I got really lucky. Yeah.
I don't know that many people would describe these experiences as lucky, but I understand what you're saying.
I'm here to talk about it. I mean, the brain tumor ended up coming back 5 years after that moment. And so I had more choices because it wasn't as big, but I went through the motions again. I had gamma knife this time, which is just radiation. But I swear, I'm very, like, I'm not, I feel like I'm describing myself as somebody who, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I'm trying to say is I'm really fun. And life isn't always about all of these things, but it is about appreciating, like, the really boring days. I'm all about it.
I'll
Give me the
bet.
boring days.
Yeah, I'll bet outside of these things, you can find the joy in any and everything,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is a very good thing as a photographer. Photography is such an interesting art because the only thing that you really have to differentiate you is just your perspective. And I don't mean like perspective like eyes. I mean like your experiences. It's what
Mm-hmm.
allows you to see the world differently. So if I were to hire somebody, the most honestly, the of every single possible thing that could be said to me from, if I were the client, somebody saying, "Oh, I shoot with this gear and I use this lighting and I do this and this is what I do." The most valuable thing I could possibly know is somebody's life experiences, what you just shared. That would be it for me. Like, if that is your life experience, I want to be photographed through those eyes where you can actually see the incredible in the mundane. If you can find those moments, that is exactly what people are looking for. Now, how do you translate that experience into how you speak to your clients?
I mean, usually when clients are interviewing me for a job, they will ask me how I got into photography. So, like, I won't necessarily go into all of the detail of
The depth of
being
what we
diagnosed with this.
discovered. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say the loss of my mother and realizing how important a photograph
Yeah.
is what makes me pick up a camera. Right. And so that answer of why I'm a photographer and how I got into it is like what gets me through summers that are like crazy busy and I'm shooting X amount of weddings and you get exhausted. It's just like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because maybe these people don't realize this yet, but it's going to be a huge deal that everybody they love is in the same room, right? It's going to be a
Yeah.
really big deal that their grandmother's there or that their mom is like getting their dress on with them or whatever it is, their first dance with their dad. Like all of these moments, even though they're contrived in a way that like every wedding sort of feels the same, it's very personal to them.
Yeah.
And so I do just, I go into that. I was part of a campaign that Fujifilm did that I did talk about the loss of my mother, but I also talked about my brain tumor. So like when I had that brain tumor, I missed 5 weddings.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's so important to have a crew of people that you trust and photographers that you can reach out to and be like, hey, I need help. And so all of that was orchestrated. Everybody's wedding got photographed, like all of those things. But I felt like my career was over because as a photographer, an event photographer, I was like, if I can't show up? Like, I honestly thought like my career was done.
Yeah. Well,
And
not to
so,
mention the
yeah.
eyesight issue too. I mean, that
Oh, that thing? Yeah.
that's a good way to sideline a photographer.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I mean, there was that idea of like, what am I if I can't see anything? I mean, obviously
Yeah.
there are incredible people who don't have eyes that don't have eyesight and they're amazing and they accomplish great things. I'm just saying, as somebody who got thrown that curveball on a Wednesday
Yeah.
unknowingly, I was like, oh man, who am I?
Yeah, that's wild. Okay, so do you teach? A side note, do you teach?
I don't. It's funny because I get asked that question a lot, but I'm not a techie kind of person. Um, I do so much on feeling when would, I shoot manual. I know what I'm doing essentially, but like to be able to describe things is
Oh my goodness,
hard for me.
who gives a shit about the technical stuff? I mean, you I'm going to say this as somebody who has been teaching for a while. You need to be teaching. Like the way that obviously you need to be with your family number 1, you need to be doing your job and all those things number 2, but there is a perspective that you have that very few people on this earth have. And I almost feel like maybe don't even bother teaching people in person. Create some sort of course. Create something that is going to last. That this perspective that you have, Alison, is so unique.
Thanks. I asked
Sorry,
you terrible
I'm
with compliments.
soapboxing. I'm a little bit soapboxy on that one.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm still very shy. Um, but yeah, it's something that I don't know. I started a personal project. Do you do personal projects?
I do.
Okay. So I started a personal project where essentially the idea is my mom died at 42 years old and 21 days. So she was
Hmm.
42 years and 21 days. And so I've always felt like, even though I know that it's not true, that I would die at 42. So the project title is 42 years and 22 days, because by the time I get to the 22nd day, I would be 1 day older than she lived. Um, and so I've been telling stories, like writing stories and taking a photograph or using an old photograph. And I started this over quarantine because who has time for these things in everyday life, right?
Hmm.
But I'm really hoping that I stick with it. And I feel like maybe that could be more of something I would feel comfortable doing, like writing, just because I need to get over myself, and I'm my own worst enemy and things, but I'm shy.
I mean, I can tell that you're shy. I can tell that you are, and that's not a bad thing. I can tell that stuff like this is probably outside of your comfort zone, but at the same
Hmm.
time, that's a huge piece of what makes it authentic. At first, I just thought you didn't want to talk to me, but it's very easy to
um,
see. It's very easy to see that this is who you are. This is the authentic you, and that, to be honest, is all that matters for I think a lot of people now. And the experiences that you have are not things that, like, when you pick up a camera. If I were to take an Alison Conklin photography class, okay, and you were standing there
mhm.
teaching, if you picked up that camera, I do not give a rat's ass about what aperture you're using, what shutter speed you're setting. Like this. If the day that I die, I hope I can convey this one thing across to every industry, which is let go of the technical and start holding on to the why of something. And what I
Mhm.
want to hear you to describe is, as you pick up that camera and you're pointing it, I want to hear your thought process as to what you see and why you see those things. And that would be incredibly insightful for, I think, thousands of people.
Well, thanks.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay, fair enough.
So tell me this then. Having seen kind of the other side, I feel like the amount of joy that you can potentially hold is only as much as the sorrow that you've experienced, and you've experienced a good amount. So when you're outside of those moments now, what does life look like? Like, what are the things that bring you joy?
I mean, obviously, my family, my kids are, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself when my son leaves for college in like 5 months. I've joked that I will also enroll in college. um, but
Teach college?
yeah, really, or like just see if WVU would hire me to photograph the college. Like I don't know. I've been working at all kinds of scenarios. I, you know, my husband and I, he's so great, and it's
What does
always
your
a good
husband do
time we have.
for work?
So he works with me, so he's a photographer
Oh,
as
that's
well.
awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So we spend all the time together anyway, so quarantine wasn't a big deal. Um,
Yeah.
being stuck in the house. We have two Great Danes that we are, love, and I've got a good group of friends. I don't have a lot of family in this area, so my friends are sort of my family. And that's basically what I do. I like to cook, I guess, too. I don't know. And I've been writing, which has been really therapeutic.
Oh, tell me about this.
So,
You're talking to another person who has been through some stuff, and I enjoy every bit of the mundane. Like being at
mhm.
home and just being around family and cooking and hanging out, road trips. These are my favorite things,
Mhm.
but I am also a writer. So, what are you writing?
Well, I'm writing for that project that I'm doing. Um, and so I'm writing every day, like coming up with something to write about every day, which I try to talk myself out of every day,
Hmm.
but I've been keeping up with it. And I guess I love telling stories, whether it's through writing or photography. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's been like really, I find it terrifying because I'm putting myself out there because there's a lot of things that people don't actually know about me. And so I'm like writing it and posting it, even if I think there's like less than 50 followers because it's like private, but it's still like, oh crap, But
Is this on your blog, or you said it's private, so it's not something that
mhm.
everyone
I'll
could
let you
see? Or
follow it.
okay,
You can follow it if you want. Yeah,
I do want it.
it's 42 years and 22 days. Numbers are numbers and words are words.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so yeah, that's basically what I've been writing. I've written in the past for things for like Click Magazine, and I work for a local magazine here, and I do interviews on chefs and like what made them want to be chefs. I love food photography. I photographed 2 cookbooks. I photographed 2 fashion books. So I love people's stories, honestly, because I think like I want to know, you said you've been through some things. I would love to know what those things are and like how you walked through them or how you continue. Like we all have quiet battles, right? And like the fear that I always held on to about this 42-year thing, I find that it's so important to kind of speak it because it sort of lives in your head and then you feel like it just kind of grows and gets worse. And if you just say it out loud, other people will be able to listen or other people will be able to relate or give you a thought and not make it so big, if that makes sense. My
Yeah.
stepmother killed herself almost 2 years ago. So that really opened my eyes and I sort of like implanted, like put this like idea in my head of doing something that was just honest because I feel like our society can be so have this idea of perfection where like
Yeah.
everything you put out there is perfect and I life is so not that.
I mean, you've had many of these opportunities where your eyes been opened far greater than anybody else. Your stepmother and I'm sorry to hear that experience as well, but your stepmother killing herself. What do you mean that opened your eyes in a certain way? Like, what was it about that experience that changed for you?
So sure. So like it was a complete shock. Um
So nobody had any expectation that she would do that.
no. And what ended up coming to light was that she had had a baby when she was a teenager and her parents in that time, I don't know if this was the 60s or I don't remember. I don't know the math of the of the years,
Yeah.
but they sent her away, and so it became this private thing that none of her siblings even knew that she had this baby, and then she had to give the baby up for adoption. It was something she lived with and regretted or felt very sad about, and she never told anybody. And that was what her suicide letter was mostly about. And it was like if you would have just all of those feelings are really real
Yeah.
and really heavy. But if we can just be a society where you can say, this experience happened to me and I'm having a hard day, and you can be honest about it, wouldn't that be a more beautiful society? And that people could heal and help each other rather than have to pretend that everything's fine when it's not fine. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like this
Oh, I
suddenly got
I know
really heavy and I
100% what you're saying.
apologize.
No, I mean this whole podcast is kind of themed around. I mean, this episode specifically, I feel like is living an authentic life, like figuring out what it is that you value and attaching those values to it and being yourself and being okay to make mistakes and being okay to speak about it. And I know exactly what you're saying because I've been through plenty of my own, but there's a lot of people that don't, there's a lot of people that are very much caught up in it was weird. It used to just be keeping up with the Joneses, right? I mean, back in the 2000s, that's really the early 2000s. That's really all it was, you tried to live the life that you saw your neighbors living. Well, now your neighbors is every single person in the world online. And, you try to say my neighbors are the people that have millions of likes and millions of followers and I got to keep up with them. And we fall into this like really weird pattern of just living for Instagram. But Instagram is not, I don't mean that as a specific platform. I mean that as like this social phenomenon of like every platform. We live for the Instagram moments, the highlight moments of our lives, as opposed to like speaking about everything in between, celebrating everything in between, talking about everything in between. It's incredibly inauthentic. It was one of the huge drives. So I finished a book. When you were talking about personal projects, my first book is largely the outcome of a personal project, and creating this podcast is along the same vein of wanting to push back against inauthenticity. I'm exhausted with it. I'm tired of surface level conversations. I'm tired of, just posting the good to social media and like when somebody does post something real, I think now it's starting to become more acceptable. But a few years ago, if you were posting something real, nobody gave a shit. Everyone was like, yeah, just get us back to your highlights. Like we all got our own stuff going on. We don't need to hear about your truths. But it's such an unusual time to be living. It's such an unusual time to navigate as a young adult, like for your kids. How do you get them out of this mindset?
So my kids are phenomenal. Like they're not the norm in terms of they don't have Instagrams.
Oh,
They don't
wow.
have Facebooks. Yeah, they're not interested. I
You have
so
done a
they
good job,
just
Mom. Goodness. Wait, tell
thanks.
me how did you make this thing happen? Now I need some parenting lessons here.
Yeah, I mean, I am not sure how it happened, but it just did. I think that I mean, like they're both just really beautiful souls, and they're both very unique and different ways. My oldest one is going to college and wants to be cybersecurity, but it's funny because like we're like, Joe, all of the other like upcoming freshmen have Instagrams and they're sharing. He's like, I don't care. I don't want an Instagram. I'm like, all right, I get it, Um, I don't know. It just happened. They just are completely uninterested in any of that stuff.
That makes my heart
I
happy.
Yeah, I wish I had a secret answer for you, but I don't.
I think I
They're
know the answer. I think you and your husband do a good job of living life. I mean, that has to be the answer.
right. I hope
If
so.
Yeah, I mean, if you as parents are doing a good job of living life and showing them what it can be, then the like fakeries of social media become kind of boring compared to reality. But
Right.
I'm telling you, out here in Orange County, I can list off a whole host of neighbors and people that I know who the parents, when they're around their children, they are on their phones nonstop. And I don't just mean like checking a text message or doing a work email. I mean like they are on Instagram, posting on Instagram, talking about there's an entire market in California for just doing like Instagram family photos. Like, let's go take your family out and do pretty pictures to make it look like you have a perfect life so you can post and talk about it. It's
Right.
it's an entire industry.
Yeah. And I find that really hard because, like, again, my why of picking up a camera has nothing to do about making your life look like something it's not. I want, you know what I mean? I want the connection of like the realness of, your family's been through a struggle, but here we are and we love each other regardless. I can be awful some days and my husband will still love me, right? Like, let's just be honest because I just don't know who are we protecting in this scenario? Like, who's being protected if we're saying like my life is
Nobody.
so perfect and no one, because
I
you're going
mean,
to eventually at some point everyone is going to have a, a moment in their lives that they're going to be like, I didn't see this coming. I woke up and I'm blind today. Like, now what? How do I turn this into something? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're all going to
oh,
have
for sure.
everyone, and it's no one's life is perfect, even though they want to claim that it is or like show that it is. But eventually, we all hit something. Something happens. Nothing stays the same forever.
Yeah, the worst part about the way that all this leads is like not only you're not protecting it, you're basically setting every single person up to fail because the
Mhm.
expectations are so far from the reality. And I think you can go anywhere right now and read studies talking about how depression is at an all-time high, and it's weird because as humans, we're social creatures. We're more connected than ever before, and yet we're more depressed than we've ever been before. I think it truly has to do with what we're showing, what we're presenting, and everything that we're hiding and holding back, and setting this expectation that this is life.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. I mean, 100%. Because the connection that we have isn't real
Yeah,
because we're hiding. What was your book about?
So my book it's called Stupid Simple Relationships. So this podcast is kind of a spin-off of the concept in terms of, well, this podcast is really a place to talk about stupid simple truths, like things that would help all of us to live better lives. And then as I apply those things to different areas, it'll be stupid simple business and stupid simple relationships and stupid simple communication. And so I want to write a series of books that kind of contain these truths that I get to discover and uncover in research and in talking with amazing people like you. But the first one is relationships. So I personally thought, so I went through a marriage that was not good for either of us. 15 years, nobody cheated on anybody. It was just emotional abuse throughout the entire time, and eventually leading up to one of us going to like a point of critical failure where I was the one thinking, okay, maybe dying is just better than this. And eventually the thought was, why am I thinking of that as opposed to like any other solution? Like, why am I not thinking about solutions that would allow me to still be around for my kids? But along the way, I was 2 weeks into my marriage when I realized how broken it was and how I knew nothing. And I'd always loved psychology, so I started reading books, and I was reading books constantly, and I started seeing counselors. And so I thought I'd have this thing on lockdown in a few months. It'd be like, I know how this works, and I've got it fixed, and we're good. And 15 years later, I'd read hundreds of books, and I'd seen hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of counseling. And I asked my counselor, I started asking these counselors this question, like, just tell me what a healthy relationship looks like. That's it. Like, just, I would sit down every time I'd see a new counselor, a new person who would claim to know relationships. And I'd say, okay, just tell me, what does a healthy relationship look like? And none of them could answer the question. Like the counselors would attempt to. They would say kind of vagaries like, relationships are all about communication. And I'd been through enough at that point where I would just start calling them on their bullshit. And I would literally say like, okay, so that line is bullshit. And let me tell you why. Because what is it to be a good communicator? I mean, professional negotiators spend their entire lives becoming good communicators. And if that's what it takes to have a successful relationship, every one of us are going to be horrifically off. And then they would come back with other cliche kind of pieces of advice. And eventually I came to realize like, I need to be the one to write this. So 10 years back, I started taking notes on my clients. I figured photography is an interesting job because your clients, they're not walking into your office expecting you to take notes on them like, some sort of judge, which is what counseling is. And so they act normal, they behave normal. And so you can kind of look at the way that they speak to each other. You can look at the nuances, how they act, how they, show their love, every little piece, and you get to follow up with them repeatedly. So from the engagement shoot to the wedding to all these post-wedding kind of shoots, maternity, newborn, family, you get these follow-ups. And so I could see people as they go through this progression. And so I started taking notes. And then about 10 years later, this is about 4 years ago, I had 500 case studies just in this thing. And that was when my last counselor was, I got so frustrated, I asked him the same question. And I was like, look, I've been coming to you for 6 months. You still haven't told me this answer. And he goes, you've read every book on this shelf and you've like, I don't know how to answer your question. I don't know that your marriage can be saved. I don't know. He's like, let me have some time to research, but I don't know. And so I left and I was like, I'm never going to ask that question to anybody again. I'm going to write it. And so I began on the process of actually putting the data and writing the book. But that was my personal project.
Wow, I love that. And I love that, you were trying to figure out something for yourself, and there's like healing in or answers in watching other people, right? Like, would you say that's a fair
Oh, for sure.
assumption? Yeah. So, and I just think that that's just so important because it's just like, why don't we just be honest? to figure this stuff out. So,
It's weird
yeah.
when you go through. It's funny because after having gone through that divorce, people do interesting things in that process. When they're in the place of kind of denial, they usually push back and speak more about like I'll suddenly notice friends hopping online and just gushing about their spouse or partner, how great they are for a period on time, and I'm like, I think they're going through some stuff. Like I think
Uh-huh.
they're going through some stuff because you generally you have more balance in an approach. Like when you are truly grateful, you're coming at it from this standpoint of like balance.
Hmm.
And so every time that happens, and I did the same thing. I was on this 14-month tirade of how good things are, and then disaster. Like just finally
Right.
you own up to it, you stop, and you're like, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna fake it anymore.
Right.
But fake it
Right.
till you
Because
make it
like,
is like like this has become a part of everything that we are now.
right. Yeah. I mean, that is true. But yeah, there's something about like who are you like if you are like shouting all these things to the who are you trying to convince at this point? Um, I don't know. But I also understand it. But I don't know. I just think that the world needs more honesty and compassion and empathy because we all go through stuff. We're all just trying to get through and we're all quietly fighting something.
So when you do you go to trade shows, do you go to conferences and those things outside of COVID?
No,
No.
I don't. I was at WPPI one time in 2019. Um, oh, and I guess I did go to Photo Plus the last year. It happened in person for with Fujifilm, but which was really fun. But no, I mean like environments where there's a lot of people, I get really overwhelmed. No.
I'm so curious as to what you feel in those environments. I mean, from the nervous side is fine, like to talk about as well. Like I don't want you to not talk about that, but I'm more so curious about the industry has a tendency to make photography about the technical pieces. It's so much about your sensor and your resolution and the lens that you're using, and it has this tendency to make photography about, really in my opinion, everything that it's not. Like,
Right.
what do you feel when you are seeing that? What do you feel when you're at these trade shows and conferences?
I mean, I guess I get really confused on the idea of idolizing a photographer in a way that feels I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that, like something that would make me sound horrible, but there's it just like it.
You could never do that, I'm pretty sure.
I just like we all take everybody takes beautiful photos at this point, and I don't know. I think that like for me, I pick up a camera because I know it's important, and that's just sort of where it ends. And the camera I use is because I like the way it works in my hands, and I like the way it feels when I take the picture. Like the end, like you know what I mean. I don't know if that makes sense.
It
I
makes sense
just
to
get
me
really
100%.
okay, and I also like I feel like because of my experiences and because a lot of these things happened to me so young, and like also just know that I know that other people have gone through way worse things than I have. So like, please don't think that I feel like I'm special or something. But I have felt really isolated because like my first day at high school, I had to look at a book on everybody's name and like because I went to a really small high school, there were only 30 kids, and I had to go in and look at the phone book, whatever, like a
Hmm.
contact sheet, and I had to like make changes. And so they had both my mom and my dad's name. So like I got called up and I had to cross out my mom's name and sit back down.
Oh,
And then I had to like go through all of the first day stuff like how did you spend your summer? And
oh my
I never
gosh.
knew how to answer. You know what I mean? Like I spent my summer cleaning out my mom's closet because like those things don't disappear. Like, you know, or so it's just, I felt really, I think a lot of my awkwardness comes from feeling like I'm misunderstood in a way because I just don't, because I just felt, I feel things differently and I see things a little differently than maybe somebody else. But again, I know a lot of people go through a lot of things. Certainly not saying that, but
Allison,
if any of
nobody's
us,
going to cancel you. Stop. You are special. Like what you're describing is very important, very special, very unique in the perspective that you have. And frankly, I'm tired of this entire culture and world of like, we can't disagree, we can't share things. I can't share something without you thinking, oh, you know, like, well, a lot of people have things worse. No, like your experiences are your experiences. That's also why I'm like soapboxing with you need to actually teach. I want to see more Allisons at these conferences telling what photography actually is and what it could mean. This is the highest form of meaning in our industry as what you have and what you do. And it represents 1% of the people that are actually teaching.
can I just smile at you because I don't know what to say?
You can smile so long as you say, I'm going to figure out a way to teach.
I'll work on it.
We'll work on it. You know, one thing is struck me in speaking with you. You said this earlier. You're a storyteller, right? I honestly think that's what you are first and foremost, over everything. I think you're not so much a photographer as you are a storyteller. You just happen to have a medium that you were drawn to from a young age. But as you said it, you could write, you could do, you know, you're a storyteller. This is who you are at your core. But your own story is the one that I'm like, that needs to get told. So you pick your medium. You want it to be through photographs. You want it to be in a book. You want it to be on a lecture, standing up in front of people, on video, online. I'm just saying, promise me something. Give me something.
You're pushing me way out of my comfort zones. But no, I mean, I'm trying. I'm trying. I'm really trying. I'll try. I am
I'll try.
just really, I know. I have to get over me. I'm my worst critic. But I am working on it. And working on this project that I'm doing is really helping because there's just like so much stuff that is kind of like really freeing and releasing because it's been living in my brain in such a way that you're like, I can't make space for this stuff anymore. Like, and also the messages I've gotten from like the 48 people who follow it are things that I never knew about some of my closest friends. And I'm like, let's talk about this because I haven't gone through exactly what you're going through, but I've gone through things that have made me feel probably pretty close to how you feel. And I'm really sorry. You know what I mean? And like, at the end of the day, I don't want to have a life where anyone would think I was disingenuous or a life that felt dishonest or unimportant or, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I mean, in talking
Save
to
me
you, I
from
don't think
myself.
anyone could think that. I do want to save you from yourself because I feel like this, I mean, there's one thing you mentioned discomfort, right? And that has it has literally become like the only true compass I have had in my life. I want to say I leaned into it completely when I was 35, and it came with a decision of like I either like, to quote Shawshank, get busy living or get busy dying, right? Like it was like I either just end this or I actually make the difficult decision to move my life forward. And it was at that point where I was like, that same discomfort that I felt in quitting my job, that same discomfort in, you know, starting up in photography and in every one of the businesses and standing up on a stage and lecturing, that discomfort has been the compass that has always led me to what was good in my life. And when I was 35, I leaned to it completely and said, I'm going to make the decision that I've been waiting on for 14 years now and go and start a new life. So when you say like that discomfort, I want to say use that as your guide. Like that is telling you that this is the place to go.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're right. Um, I know you're right. I don't have any other words to say that except that I know you're right, and I'm working on it. And I promise, like, me doing this project is really helping. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, well,
I'm also,
you're also what?
oh, I don't know. I'm also just a huge nerd and, awkward and have to get over all of these things. But I'm trying. I
I
feel
don't
like,
think you got to get over anything. I think you should be this exact version of you when you're standing on a stage.
I do have a question, actually.
What's that?
oh, yes.
Yeah, because I have very like shy tendencies as well.
Okay.
And so when you're in a large crowd, in weddings and stuff, are you constantly interacting with people, or are you just kind of a wallflower, just observing like a fly on the wall? Like, how do you kind of make your way through that type of environment?
Anthony, you should
Great
turn on
question.
your video so we can see your lovely face while you're saying that.
Oh, you see all the stuff in the back too. I do that.
That was a good question.
I love that question. It's a great question. So I am quiet. I am also kind of really supportive of the couple. So I've noticed a lot of times that people are really it's a weird kind of dynamic recently within weddings that people are on their phones during these like really insightful, like important things. But I am sort of like really great with her. I'm also good at like trying to get people to laugh. I can be goofy. But for the most part, it's not about me at all in any shape or form. It's about me and how I see their day. But like I'm trying to capture how it feels to be there, how it feels for the couple to be there, how it feels for their parents to be there, how it feels for their friends. So like I really try to like show up, say hello, talk to people, kind of like get them through the nerves of like somebody holding a camera and looking at them. And then take a step back and really try to be like, okay, what is like I'm reading a room, right? Like what's happening in this room? What's happened the past couple of days? Most of the time I know my clients a little bit from engagement shoots or from conversations we've had. So I'm a little bit of both of those things. I can certainly wrangle a crowd. I have teenagers, so I'm good at like wrangling crowds when I need to do portraits. I will put people in beautiful spots, but I'm not directing in such a way that would make them feel like if they looked back at that photo, they'd be like, oh my God, do you remember being so uncomfortable standing there posing? It is going to be like giving prompts and it's funny because like something I said as an 18-year-old at my very first wedding, I was like, so remember I got married 2 years after shooting my first wedding. So like I thought marriage was amazing. So I remember saying to that couple, oh my God, you guys are so married right now. Sounds really ridiculous, but I say it still to probably every single client because like sometimes you can simply forget that we've gone through this whole song and dance and you've just committed your life to someone. Um, so yeah, I that's does that answer? I'm kind of both, but once the real things happen, I'm like once we get past all the portraits and we're at the dinner and we're doing all those things, I'm trying to not be involved. But I also smile and laugh because people, always say something to me.
Was that comfort kind of being in the situation kind of a result of just being in the industry and doing this for so long, or was there a time like early on in the career where you were just more or less just kind of like a little more self-conscious of how of what you were doing, maybe like overemphasizing like, oh, am I doing this right, am I doing this wrong?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, yeah, I've been doing this for over 2 decades, but I think that when I started to kind of figure things out, but at first I'd be like, if anybody else had a camera, like the uncle with the big camera that was bigger than mine, I'd be like, oh God, he's probably judging everything I'm doing. I felt that way for a few years. Now I don't. Now I'm just like, let them shoot everything they want to shoot because again, the three of us could be in a room photographing the same exact subject. We're all going to come out with images that are different because of our life experiences and because of the way we feel things and see things. So, like, I have to stop. I can stop beating myself up on that. I'll just choose it in other areas. But I can stop, being being so self-conscious.
What is your favorite part of weddings to actually shoot? Like
The toast.
if you could do it your way and just describe what that is, shooting the toasts. What are you usually doing?
I mean, how often in our lives are we in a room? I mean, of course, this is when there are good toasts. There's sometimes not good toasts, but when there are when there are beautiful toasts, and somebody, I mean, it's so, I think, important and beautiful when someone feels seen. So if you have a toast and you have the father of the bride or you have a family member stand up there and really say some like beautiful things about someone, and you personally are like, that made me laugh, it made me cry, I feel like this person knows me and I feel seen in all of the things that I've experienced and all the things that have led me to get married on this day. I just think I just love watching the expressions on their faces. I love watching the expressions on the parents' faces, especially as a parent of basically adult children. There's pride that comes along with like, you just want your kids to be happy. I mean, at any age, you just want your kids to be happy. And so like just watching that beautiful moment that can occur when somebody gives a beautiful toast. It's a really long way to say that, but hopefully you're catching what I'm like saying.
Okay. We don't have any time limits, buddy. I don't know if you got to go, but
no, everyone's been really quiet. They're probably like, when is mom going to be off this thing? But everyone's been like in their rooms. We had a 2-hour delay.
Mom's finally telling her story, so we need to make sure that she has plenty of time.
Yeah, right. They're probably like, oh, mom, right? You know, roll their eyes, but it's all good. I wouldn't want anyone else to roll their eyes at me but them.
Well, so you got into wedding photography. I mean, you've been doing it for quite a while, but as you launched your business, you're a single mom, and going back to that moment for just a sec, did you feel like anything that was going on in your life was taking away meaning from, the actual wedding day or adding meaning to it? I mean, just
you mean the fact
what
that
I'm thinking.
Divorced?
Yes, exactly. Because that was a very big thing for me. Was like when I was going through a divorce, I was like, this is all horseshit. Nobody cares. For life, we'll see about that.
That's funny. I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. I think for me, and how I had used photography prior to being married and getting divorced was for grief, right? So like I found when I was photographing families before I had been married and doing all these things, like healing in the idea of watching parents play with their children, healing in the idea of preserving moments of like childhood and relationships. And so when I was in the middle of a divorce shooting weddings, it kind of allowed me to see love, right? Like that it wasn't all going to be this moment terrible for me, and that there were better things out there. So for me, it was sort of like it's going to get better, and I believe in love, and I liked watching it, and I found it healing. And I know that maybe could sound like super hippy dippy or like, yeah, okay, Alison, whatever, but I swear that was like, for me, photography has kind of allowed me to see people's lives and watch them. And that's what I love about stories and like learning about other people. Cause like, how do these people get through these specific things? Because I could learn from that.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Cause I think I can only piece this together now, but I think what drew me to wedding photography in the first place was this romantic notion of like, when I was at these weddings, I was seeing real love and I was documenting it, and it was a beautiful thing. When I'd go home, I would be reminded of the fragility and the likelihood that not everybody has it, including myself. But every wedding was like this respite. It was like this chance to see it, like I was chasing something almost. But it was weird because wedding photography has taken on very many different things in my life. When I was unhappily married, wedding photography was my chance to be happy. It was the chance to be able to celebrate in someone else's love. Then when I was going through my divorce, it was a job. During that time period, it was what I did for a living, and that's it. And then when I found love, it was my opportunity to capture and to document and to showcase both sides of it, like what I saw in front of me, but yet what you could look back on and say, this is such a wonderful thing. But it wasn't until I had that, which was only like the last few years, that I had both sides of it, basically, where I could see it from the standpoint of what it was, how important it was to document and preserve.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
But until that point, like a large piece of why I enjoyed it so much was largely selfish. It was just, this is my chance to have it in my life, to see it, to shoot it, to feel it. Mm-hmm. That's a huge piece of what it was.
I can agree with that. That's definitely like I mean, but do you think that there was anything wrong with that? I mean, I feel like it helped you.
No, and arguably it was what made me good at it early on. Mm-hmm. Was I could recognize it because I mean, it's almost sad to think about, but I could recognize it because I didn't have it. So it was so poignant, so visible to me when I was at these shoots. And when they didn't have a genuine connection, that was also clearly visible because I knew what that was. And but it's just interesting to me how it has evolved. Like what it has been to me has kind of changed throughout the years, where now mm-hmm. I see it now probably where you saw it 15 years ago. Like that's how far ahead you are in terms of recognizing what this thing is and what it could potentially be. Again, why you should be teaching,
Right. Did you mention that before? I don't remember.
I don't know if I've said that this whole time, but
yeah.
Well, I have greatly enjoyed chatting with my friend. Honestly, it's incredible to hear the experiences that you have, and yeah, I'm very grateful for. I'm grateful for that we have a podcast that we can actually do this kind of thing, because I wasn't expecting this conversation when I woke up this morning, and now, yeah, it was truly enlightening.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, and thank you for all of it. I really appreciate it, and yeah. It was really nice to get to know you, and I can't wait to kind of like dig deeper into everything, and I'm definitely going to look at your book and all of those things. I want to know all the things.
I'm excited when it comes out. I will let you know. In the meantime, though, if you guys are listening or watching, for those that are on YouTube, we will post in the show notes Alison's work. Her work is absolutely incredible. The coolest part for me is being able to go and actually look at those images now with the perspective and understanding that I have of you and your experiences, and seeing that actually in your work. So I'd highly encourage our audience to go check it out. If you are listening, then Alison, why don't you drop the website as well as your Instagram handle for them?
Sure, thanks. So my website is just my name, which is Alison Conklin. There's one L in Alison, and Conklin is CONKLIN.com. And then Instagram is the same, Alison Conklin. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm very grateful that Miles hooked us up and connected us for this. And please tell your 2 Great Danes, your 2 children, and your husband how incredible they were, that they somehow kept the entire house perfectly silent. I don't understand.
I know. It's all probably falling down around me out here, but I will check it out.
It's great meeting you, Alison. Thanks for the chat.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.